But it's only if you want to know God, and you can only know God if you love God. And if you're willing to be known by, and therefore completely digested by, infinite consciousness. But if you are in the ego mind, it is so contracted, so opaque, so small, so petty, that there's no way that you can know the infinite beauty of God. How can you know God's poetry if your own soul isn't open to that infinite beauty and majesty? You have to open completely. You have to be dilated if you want to be penetrated by God. And God has the Shiva Lingam, not you. And so the soul is in the feminine position. So interestingly, you have to go through two phases if you want to become one with God. The first phase is that you have to display all the masculine virtues. The strength, the courage to separate from the herd and from the family system and the internal superegos and all of that, those purifications, the courage that it takes to live a life in accord with Dharma and to constrain yourself, and the ability to stand for that which others will ridicule you and put you down and which you won't be able to explain. It requires a tremendous amount of courage of solitude. But then the second level is the feminine virtues, in which you have to be willing to open completely, open your heart totally, to love totally, to surrender totally, to become love. And if you aren't willing to have the courage to be completely taken by God, with all of your defenses removed, in a state of total vulnerability, then you won't reach that final stage of union. And then non-duality is not just the truth, but is the fact, the real. But it can't be that if you are still in duality and the love of the ego has not been overcome by the love of God. And this is the question. Who do you love more? Do you love your ego more? And your ego's attachments to which objects of desire and jouissance, or do you love God more? That's the balance. That's the scale that we are all in. And if we love the ego and we want to justify it and we're rigid in holding on to our positions as egos, then we can never understand the karma that we have. We can't understand the suffering. We can't understand its meaning, and we can never be free of it, because it's those very rigid positions that the ego takes that are the cause of its suffering. And so we have to let go of all positionality, all strategic thinking, all tactics, all attempts to justify our rebellion against the cosmic order or the community order or whatever order is being offered as the pathway to the transcendence of ego, which is always going to meet with resistance. And with the ego's desire to go behind the back of whatever is the authority structure, the Dharma, even try to get behind God's back, although I don't think anyone could ever do that, but they try and pretend that God doesn't see everything. Well, you're wrong, and the only loser in that is that you have then hidden yourself from God. And if you think that that's an achievement, you'll discover that it was a big mistake. So it is only in this willingness to give and be given completely that there is absolution. So understanding what God's culinary preferences are, it's not hard to make yourself very delicious. But to make yourself very delicious means you have to be willing to be very loving and very virtuous and very pure and very forgiving, compassionate, and completely truthful. The problem with egos at the end of Kali Yuga is that every ego at some deep level often, but often even on the surface nowadays, every ego feels like a criminal because it is a criminal. And so the criminal does not want to meet the law. Criminal tries to run away from the law. And so rather than having love of God, one has fear of God. You know, if you're a sin-sick soul, you're going to fear judgment, even though God tells you don't judge, lest ye be judged, and your sin is your own judgments of others and your own refusal to back off of that belief that you have the right to have opinions. But we don't, because we don't know anything. We're clueless. We have to be able to be in God consciousness for us to even be able to discern what is right and what is wrong. There has to be a cultivation of the intelligence that enables us to function accurately in the world. And that requires a great offering. When you get the diamond mind, you also get within it the golden pearl. Now that pearl is called the pearl of great price, okay? What is the price that you have to pay? It's your entire ego. If you're not willing to pay the price of giving your ego to God to be digested, then you don't get the pearl, and you don't get the diamond, you don't get the golden light, you don't get any of the rewards. You have to be willing to pay the price. And the price is not going to go any lower. You know, God isn't going to barter with you and say, okay, well, you take part of my ego and give me everything. No, it won't work that way. So we have to be willing to play by the rules and understand the value of what we're getting and the lack of value of what you're giving.